How to draw custom shapes for beginners. Hello everyone. In this video I'm going to review another interactive tutorial that will teach how to make these shapes. They're relatively easy. The main idea here is that they have a very nice topology structure and they're all using the same concept, which allows it to be so good. So let's get started. I'll load this tutorial over here and we will start. The concept here is it starts with a basic cube, setting the IDs over here, the values and the segments. So we are basically getting here evenly divided the segments. If I use 3 segments, they're evenly divided. And now it turns on the wireframe so we can see what's happening. And it's selecting these 2 outer sides over here, and it's extruding them and entering a value of 25. So this is the basic concept, what it's going to use all of these shapes. It deselects it, and now it's going to use snap to basically just move it out of the way. Okay, so we're done with the basic shape. There's not much to learn here, just to see that how you can have basic segments and do it. And it's obviously easier to use basic shapes instead of a drawing. You can do this with drawing, but using shapes with the settings here is much easier. Okay, now the next thing is the same thing. It adds a 25 and it adds segments of 3, but now here it's going to be another challenge. Instead of moving this entire thing over here, it's adding over here, going to advanced settings and using loop selection. And here the idea here is you click over here and then you have to click over here, actually in the front over here. So you click only 2 faces and it automatically loop selects everything. Now this is a very basic use case. You click 2 faces, you could have clicked 4. It's probably the same amount of steps, but in some cases if you have a lot of extra segments, loop selection is really powerful. And now you go to scale, and what this is doing now, it's scaling this down to 18.33. So let's say I have to watch over here the numbers and see over here and Xing it out. Now what happened over here and deselected? What happened now here is that you are loop selecting basically an entire loop. These are called loops. They have like a set of quads. They must be quads. Triangles wouldn't work with loops. If they're a set of quads, you can loop select them everything, and this allows you to move the entire thing. And as I said, in some cases loop selection is quite good. Now we selected these 2, we turned it off false, because otherwise if you would have it on, it would select the entire loop, which in this case would already be, if you see, we will already have 8 faces, so loop can work even hundreds of faces. So but nevertheless, that's basically the idea over here. And what it's going to do now here is extruding this to 40 and reconfirming it. And now it deselects only 1 section and then it extrudes it again to 25. Now you cannot deselect while the tool is on. The extrusion tool, Selfcut has 2 types of tools. Some tools like basic tools, transformations, Selfcut calls them simple tools, which allows you to do other actions while they're open. And then we have more, we call them advanced tools or whatever, these type of tools, which have the confirmation icon that you have to confirm it. And while you are in these tools, you cannot switch selections and everything else. So you have to basically close the tool before make the other selection. But the main idea here is that this could have been done using it in one shot. First extrude that, and then this, by the amount this is, I think it was 40, and then make this 40 or what, I forgot to pay attention how much this was, but make this entire one shot extruded. And the reason it was not done that way is because then we wouldn't have this nice quads, this nice loops. So if you make this in one shot up, this would be flat, you wouldn't have this line, it would be some triangles connecting them. So this is a good way of learning how to kind of build stuff and keep them nice loops, which is easy for loop selection, but also much easier and much nicer topology structure to work on later. Okay, now it's going to do the same thing. Move this out of the way, simply move it here. And now we're going to go to the final shape, which is even more advanced. We can learn more. So we're basically setting the same thing. I'm just going to skip. And this is kind of, if you think about this shape, it's the same shape as this. The first shape or the second shape that we created is just the opposite side. So it's kind of a different setting here to make it look like this. And now what we're going to do here is we again going to the loop selection and selecting this loop here. Okay, and it's going now to scale it to 50. So it's going to make the X to 50. So now here's another interesting thing. Before it used the gizmos. We call them gizmos. You had to use a gizmo because we want it to be asymmetric, should not be symmetrical. So if you move it only to one side, because this over here, the way we did it is that this becomes bigger, and the way we made it bigger, because this was initially created all equal. When you set 3 segments, they are equally divided segments. So we took the gizmo one direction and moved it to one side, so this became bigger at the same time that the center section becomes smaller. Now the idea is we want it to be symmetrical. So you can actually use a gizmo and make it symmetrical if you turn on the symmetry button. But the purpose here was not to make it symmetrical. But once you turn it on symmetrical, if you turn on the symmetry button, you can use a gizmo, will be symmetrical. But by default, a typing here would be symmetrical and the gizmo will be asymmetrical. That's the most friendly, I guess, how you work with it. So now we are typing in 50, and what you see over here, what happened is this became bigger and both sides became smaller simultaneously while this became bigger. And now it turns off the loop selection, deselecting everything, and we are selecting these two. Again, we don't want to select the loop over here, selecting only these two. And just as a side note, what will happen if you make a loop like this? If you leave on loop selection, as you click here and then click here, normally loop selection you've seen before is clicking on a neighbor. You click one and then on a neighbor. And that's, by the way, a standard practice that works. You'll find them in most other CAD software, work the same way. But SolveCAD has also the idea that you can make actually a loop selection by selecting something that is not a neighbor. In that case, it will select from here until here. So we'll basically select these 3 faces. We call them range selection. So normally loop selection, the term loop, it's called when something is like these quads and they create entire loops. But if you would do kind of from here to here, it wouldn't technically be a loop, it will be a range, but still within the same tool. Okay, so now it's going to use extrusion, and the same concept I said before, that it's going to make extrusion into steps, but now actually it's not changing selection. On the same selection, we're going to make it a few steps, and the way to do it is we don't have to exit the tool. We can just click apply. And once you click apply, it adds it automatically. The next, now it's changing actually automatically, it adds the same amount of steps, so it's changing the same value again. If you click many times apply, it will be the same, but now it changed it, and now we click to confirm. So we basically have this, and it's deselecting. And now what it's doing here is it's turning on edge selection and selects this and simply moves it down. So it moves it down to 20, and that's it basically. It's finished the tutorial. So let's see what we got over here. So we basically got this mode, and the reason we needed to do this again in 2 steps because we wanted to have this very nice way to move down in a simple loop and these type of stuff. Now you can do this, and technically you can make these type of stuff using a drawing, and it will be about the same amount of steps, but definitely this is a lot easier way to do this. And this type of modeling, actually what we just did, this is called box modeling. You kind of do, you know, this type working with loops and working with extrusion, transformation, this is the basic type of stuff. And yeah, it's a good practice how to make, you can technically make almost any shape with these type of deals, and this is definitely much cleaner geometry than going with stitch and scoop approach, and even better than drawing. So this is one of the nicest geometry structures when you are doing these type of shapes. Okay, I hope you learned something new from this video. Let me know in the comments if you want me to show anything else or if you have any other questions. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.